मैटर मेरे को मालूम है। सोशल मीडिया पे कैंपेन किया था, सोशल मीडिया पे कैंपेन किया था एबीवीपी के खिलाफ। फिर अखिल विद्या बालन उसके अगेंस्ट में देख हुआ क्या दिल्ली यूनिवर्सिटी रामदास कॉलेज में डिबेट उसमें आई को जस्ट पिछले बार जो बंदा आया था रिस्पॉन्स देने वहाँ से एबीवीपी वालों के बीच में दिल्ली यूनिवर्सिटी बीच में लड़ाई होती है दोनों गैंग के बीच में। ठीक है ये होगा ये जो दिल्ली है कॉलेज वाली कौन सा कॉलेज में पढ़ती है रामदास कॉलेज ये है लेडीज।
मैं ये कहना चाहूँगा कि मैं ये कहना चाहूँगा जो किताब जो लिखी गई है वो एक लव स्टोरी, एक थ्रिलर और एक ख़ास टाइम पे सेट है जो कि सेकेंड वर्ल्ड वॉर, दूसरे विश्व युद्ध का टाइम था जब नेताजी सुभाष चंद्र बोस ने अपनी इंडियन नेशनल आर्मी बनाई थी। अब बहुत कुछ बोला जा रहा है सुभाष चंद्र बोस की इंडियन नेशनल आर्मी के बारे में और सुभाष चंद्र बोस के उस काम पे वो सही थे, गलत थे, वो हैं, वो नहीं है, वो मारे गए कि नहीं मारे गए, वो तमाम तरह की कंट्रोवर्सीज है। तो बहुत मज़ेदार किताब है, बहुत सही टाइम पे है। उसकी किताब की निकलने की टाइमिंग बहुत अच्छी है बिकॉज बहुत सारे लोग उत्सुक हैं जानने के लिए कि ये क्या हुआ था। बट ये एक फिक्शनल किताब है और बहुत मज़ेदार, इट्स अ वेरी वेरी गुड रीड। तो जिनको हिस्ट्री की में दिलचस्पी है उनको मज़ा आएगा, जिनको एक लव स्टोरी, थ्रिलर बेस्ड लव स्टोरी और बहुत ही एक पीरियड में सेट फिक्शन में इंटरेस्ट है उनको भी मज़ा आ जाएगा। तो दोनों तरह के बोथ kind of readers would enjoy this book. I have just finished shooting रागदेश, उसकी एडिटिंग चल रही है। तो बहुत बड़ा सब्जेक्ट है। रागदेश बताएगा कि एक्चुअली हिंदुस्तान को आज़ादी मिली तो कैसे मिली, क्योंकि बहुत सारे मुगालते हैं, बहुत सारी चीज़ें हैं, बहुत सारी चीज़ों में पर्दा गिरा हुआ है। लोगों को पता नहीं है कि सुभाष चंद्र बोस जो हमने बचपन में अपने किताबों में पढ़ा है सुभाष चंद्र, लेकिन बहुत सारे लोग जानते नहीं सुभाष चंद्र बोस के काम के बारे में। तो वो बहुत बड़े लीडर थे, मुझे लगता है हिंदुस्तान के सबसे बड़े फ्रीडम फाइटर वही थे। मेरे हिसाब से देश को आज़ादी उन्होंने दिलाई है। रागदेश उसी के बारे में। हाँ, लेकिन मुझे ये वक्त अच्छा नहीं लगा, मुझे सिर्फ उसकी पोस्ट के बारे में बात नहीं, ये टाइम में हर चीज़ का को मुद्दा बना देना, क्योंकि आपके पास एक ऐसा प्लेटफॉर्म है ट्विटर या कम्युनिकेशन के तरह, हर चीज़ को न्यूज़ बना देना, हर चीज़ को एक हर चीज़ को तूल देना, तिल का पहाड़ बना देना, ये अच्छी बात नहीं है। वो मासूम सी लड़की है, उसने कुछ कहा तो उसको लेकर के इतने बड़े बड़े लोग उस पर कॉमेंट क्यों कर रहे हैं? उसको बच्चे का जीना आराम कर दिया आपने। मुझे तो बहुत बुरा लगता है और मैं बहुत असहाय फील करता हूँ, बहुत हेल्पलेस फील करता हूँ कि देश की मेजॉरिटी इस तरह की बात सोच रही है। तो मुझे लगता नहीं कि देश किसी अच्छी तरफ ये देश जा रहा है, तो मुझे अच्छा नहीं लगता बस। ऑस्कर एंटायर सेरेमनी बहुत अच्छी थी, हमेशा अच्छी लगती है, बहुत एलिगेंट होती है और हमको लगता है कि हमारे अवार्ड शोज़ ऐसे क्यों नहीं होते। हमारे अवार्ड शोज़ में इतनी बढ़ती की होती रहती है, इतना पॉइज और इतना एक रीगल और एक तमीज़ से क्यों नहीं करते हैं हम लोग। बट देखिए वहाँ भी इतना बड़ा फियास्को हो गया। तो ये भूलने की जो चीज़ है ना, जितना सोशल नेटवर्किंग साइट्स और जितने प्लेटफॉर्म्स कम्युनिकेट करने के लिए बनते जा रहे हैं, इंसान उतना भूलता जा रहा है। देखिए उनसे भी गलती हो गई, उनसे वो ये ऐसी नहीं होती, और तरह की तमाम गलतियाँ होती हैं। I was very happy that La La Land did not get the Best Picture award and Moonlight got it. तो जब La La Land बोला तो I was disappointed, but when Moonlight got it, मैंने कहा देखो there's some hope. there is justice. Thank you very much.
नौमिता के साथ मैंने बहुत काम किया है, मैं उनसे बहुत डरती थी, तो जब इनका फ़ोन आया और उन्होंने कहा कि मैंने किताब लिखी है, क्या तुम लॉन्च करोगी, से पहले मैंने हाँ कर दी बिकॉज एडवर्टाइजिंग में मैंने बहुत काम किया है इनके साथ। इंडिया के सबसे बेहतरीन एड फिल्म मेकर्स में से ये जाने जाते हैं और तो मुझ में अब भी वो डर है इसीलिए मैंने तुरंत हाँ कर दी। So it was rather simple to get me to do the book launch, but I'm also very, very excited to be launching Namita and Sanjay's book. मैं अनपढ़ हो गई हूँ फिल्म स्क्रिप्ट्स के अलावा बहुत पढ़ने का मौका नहीं मिलता, पर ये मुझे मज़ेदार इसलिए भी लगी क्योंकि जब हिस्ट्री से मैं ज़्यादा थोड़ी तंग आ जाती हूँ, तो अगर हिस्टोरिकल फिक्शन हो तो एक इमेजिनेशन का वहाँ स्कोप होता है कि आप सोचते हैं कि अच्छा ये तो हो रहा था पॉलिटिकली, हिस्ट्री कहता है कि ये हुआ, पर इंडिविजुअल्स के लाइफ्स में क्या हो रहा था दैट टाइम, दैट एक्साइट्स मी अ लॉट, व्हिच इज़ व्हाई आई थिंक दिस इज़ एंड इट्स अ वेरी ग्रिपिंग बुक। इसको फिल्म ज़रूर, दे शुड मेक इट। आई थिंक किताबें हमेशा रेलेवेंट रहेंगी। आई डोंट, जिनको पढ़ना अच्छा लगता है वो शायद आज किंडल पे पढ़ें, यू नो, हार्ड कॉपी शायद कम पढ़ें, पर आई नो अ लॉट ऑफ पीपल हु स्टिल लाइक टू रीड, लाइक दैट टच एंड फील ऑफ अ बुक।
Any book on your memoirs or something that we can expect, like?
मेरी उम्र क्या लगती है आपको? मेमोआर्स के लिए टाइम हो गया सुमित?
चलता रहना चाहिए ना सामने।
फिलहाल तो नहीं।
अच्छा, एक चीज, दो चीज मुझे had you happened to watch Oscars?
Yes, I did.
कैसा रहा आपका अनुभव?
आई थिंक दुनिया भर के लिए बहुत ही एक अनोखा अनुभव रहा। ऐसा भी हो सकता है या फिर कुछ भी हो सकता है, प्रूव हो गया वहाँ।
सिर्फ वहीं पे होता है या हमारे यहाँ भी होता है ऐसे?
यू नो, होता ये कि ऑफकोर्स हमारे यहाँ हम जानते हैं, पर हमें हमेशा लगता है कि नहीं वहाँ ऐसे नहीं होता होगा, पर वहाँ भी ऐसे हुआ।
एक चीज़ और, प्लीज इफ यू थिंक आंसर इट, गुलमोहर कौर, आपने पढ़ा हो के बारे में जो चल रहा है, आपकी प्रतिक्रिया कुछ अगर थोड़ा बहुत अगर आप कुछ प्रकाश डालना चाहें?
यू नो, मैं इसके बारे में ज़्यादा नहीं कहना चाहती, बिकॉज I think what we really need to respect is people's freedom of expression. उसने कुछ कहा, किसी और ने कुछ कहा, सब अपनी अपनी जगह सही है, अपने अपनी जगह सही है, पर मैं इसमें और ज़्यादा नहीं कहना चाहती, बिकॉज आई थिंक एवरीवन हैज़ अ राइट टू एक्सप्रेस व्हाट दे फील।
वायलेंस ठीक है, वायलेंस नहीं होना चाहिए।
ऑफ कोर्स नहीं होना चाहिए, बिल्कुल कोई भी नहीं, वायलेंस कोई भी नहीं चाहता।
मतलब कवर अगर हम देख रहे हैं तो 36 से हमें लग रहा है कि ये शाहिद और कंगना है। कवर के बारे में जरा बताएं।
ये आप बताएं प्लीज।
ये हमारी इंटेंशन बिल्कुल नहीं थी कि वो कुछ किसी के साथ रिजेम्बलेंस हो उनकी।
We were trying to get the feel of Aditi and the main character, and these were friends who agreed, so that's how we got there.
फिल्मों की क्या तैयारी चल रही है अभी? किस में आप?
बेगम जान रिलीज हो रही है 14 अप्रैल को, और उसके बाद तुम्हारी सुलू की शूटिंग शुरू होगी, तो बस फिलहाल तैयारी चल रही है। We'll know in a while. Thank you.
And then before you leave, you came as the fresh here with this wonderful sari. Can you just elaborate on this?
I can, you know, Pranay and Shaunak, my stylist, got this for me, and I absolutely loved it because there's something very classic about it, which is why I wore it.
चलिए जल्दी से आप ऑस्कर्स के रेड कार्पेट पे आए हमारे लिए
हाय हाय इंशाल्लाह ऑस्कर लेके आऊँ दुआ करना यार.
You can have you can ask for whatever you want. Yeah, I'm a bit biased, nothing. Can't help it. Okay, so since we're all friends and family out here, we'd like to welcome all of you to the launch of Namita Roy Ghose and Sanjay Chopra's The Wrong Turn. Yay! So we're going to get into how they got together and wrote this book, and of course we have a lovely panel of wonderful speakers, and we're going to read excerpts from the book for all of us today. But I think the person who made it all possible, besides the two of you who spent a long time writing it and really slogged, is this man here called Ajay Mago, who's the publisher of All Books International, the guy who is the most amazing. No, let me finish my sentence. He makes the most amazing faux pas. Yeah. Ajay Mago.
Thanks, Maria, for this lovely introduction. Thank you. Yeah, I'll speak to you later. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all for joining us this evening to celebrate the launch of our latest publication from Home Books International, The Wrong Turn. Love and Betrayal in Time of Netaji, co-authored by Sanjay Chopra and Namita Roy Ghose. I am particularly beholden to Vidya Balan, our guest of honor for this evening, Tigmanshu Dhulia, Anil Dharkar, Arshad Warsi is yet to come, Maria Goretti, she's here, Tisca Chopra for being here today. As award-winning individuals of distinction, and of course, I'm so sorry, and Simone Singer. Okay. As award-winning individuals of distinction in your field, and as friends, since some of you have given me a place in your home and heart too, you agreed to have a discussion on arguably one of the finest pieces of literary fiction out of India. What could be a better homage to this genre of writing that publishers continue rooting for? I grew up smelling and touching books since my father decided to be part of the book industry nearly 60 years ago. We raced through literary and historical fiction. In hindsight, A Tale of Two Cities, Dr. Zhivago, Gone with the Wind, our very own Rangbhumi, Gaban, Godan, or the plethora of gut-wrenching partition stories. Literary and historical fiction touched our lives either through books, films, or through the television screen that refreshed memories of times gone by. In that lineage, if I may say so, situates The Wrong Turn, in which human beings submit to and resist the push and pull of histories and geographies, set to a perpetual churning by human foibles and needs. As the evening progresses, you shall hear enough about the book to want to know why 1944 was a watershed year for India, how the INA dreamt of freedom at least 3 years before it was actually won, and how the protagonist still found the time and space to love, hate, win, lose, nurture, betray, punish, and pardon. Sanjay and Namita. The book is here and seems almost miraculously so, but thank you for co-authoring The Wrong Turn. Over a drink later in the evening, you may tell me who made the coffee, who wrote the pages, who tore them up and wrote afresh, and who took sides of the protagonist as they almost became flesh and blood. Thank you for journeying together through this marvelous story. A quick read through the first 20 pages, and we at Home Books International knew a story well told from the rest of the stories. So thank you both once again. Launching it in a place called Junkyard Cafe is significant. For that is where we dig into the past and unearth forgotten bits of our lives. Thank you so much, Umang Tiwari, he's my dear friend, and your team for getting us to the Junkyard Cafes. The ambience is perfect for a walk back in time. And I hope you enjoy it. And at the end, do not forget your copy of The Wrong Turn for the right read. It's available outside. Thank you, and have a wonderful evening.
somebody gave me a free book. Can I sell it? Okay, so a small little introduction about both our authors sitting here today. And since I've not done my homework, I have it on my phone. So a little something about Namita. I met Namita, I think, 25 years ago. Okay, I did some of my best ads with her. As you all know, everyone sitting in this room knows Namita. She comes from Kolkata. And she's been playing with words since she was just a little kid. So the first thing that, not the first thing, I think one of the first things that she actually wrote was when she was 12 years old and her teacher asked her to write a piece on her most memorable day. And she decided to write about this Russian girl on the last day of World War II. Well, her teacher thought that, oh my God, she's made up these stories, and that was her first rejection. Well, since then, she has not stopped. She's been making up stories, writing screenplays, writing short stories, writing poems. She was somebody who actually wanted to be a journalist till she stumbled into advertising. And as you know, the rest is history. She was the youngest creative director at HTA. She runs White Light Films and directs and produces for them. As you know, White Light Films makes some of the best ad films in this place. I was lucky enough to work with her. They won lots and lots of awards, and besides that, she also does a lot of pro bono films for issues that are close to her heart. Various issues like literacy, stuff to do with nature, sexual harassment. But besides all that, she is a real fun person, a foodie, a traveler, and shares something with the other author of the book, that's Buddhism. So Sanjay is somebody who, whoever has an office like 40,000 feet in the air. But Sanjay Chopra does, because he's a pilot. So I believe he does most of his thinking when he's up there in the air, which means I'm not getting onto a flight that has him in it. But having said that, I must say that he is most enchanting when he's telling you about, stuff that happens when he's on flight or when he's just generally talking to you. He kind of grabs your attention and makes you listen to all the stuff that he wants to tell you about. And his writing is like that. It's old world, it's charming, and yet his stories are all so new, so today, so tomorrow probably. And so these are our authors. A big round of applause. Sanjay Chopra and Namita Roy Ghosh. So can I ask her a few questions?
I'd like to clarify that Adi said over endless rounds of coffee. Let me tell you, the culprit was single malt.
The culprit was single
Never
malt.
any coffee.
There was never coffee.
There was
So
never coffee.
I just want to ask you all, how did you all decide to collaborate on a book? How easy or how difficult is it for two people with an independent thought process to come to a marriage of words and come to a storyline that just resonates so beautifully?
Okay.
There is a mic.
Oh, yes. So, start.
I'll give you this.
Check, check, check.
Yeah, it's on.
How about a loud enough voice?
Okay. Straight up to it. Check, check. It's fine? Check. Here.
Check, check. Okay, so I think it started with the fact that we're very good friends. And like she said, we met over discussing Buddhism. So we didn't have many arguments. I think the point was that it was a story that gripped both our, I think, imaginations. It was a story whose time had come, and it needed to be, we felt it needed to be told. And when we did, research, lots and lots of research, because you don't want to make silly mistakes on a subject like this. When we did all the research and we found that there was this little gap in history. Why did the INA lose? Why did Subhash Chandra Bose, why was that battle lost? And nobody really, there were no historical accounts of actually why they lost. And that seemed like a wonderful place to kind of bring in this very, very human story. And it's really, I think it's got a larger scope. It's not just about that battle. It's about war. It's about what happens to human beings, what happens to individual human beings during war. It's about what, in a very kind of large sense, the small little crossroads we all face, and then we take the wrong turn. And so there was a lot of, he was flying, I was working. Whenever we were in town together, we would sit, we would talk, we would write separately, come together, discuss, tear it apart, go back. And so it kind of flowed on. And then when everything kind of came together, the actual sitting down and the kind of hard work of writing, that took about, it took about almost 2 years.
Wow.
And then it was done, and there was Ajay.
And then there was Ajay.
Yeah, but I think that all stories are basically an act of collaboration. And well, I had the best collaborator in the world, bright as she is beautiful, Namita. And I think that ultimately that, like she said, the story needed to be told. And which was why the characters and the plot line was so compelling that we just couldn't put our pens down or our keys to a stop. And also, it's about time that we've, in this entire narrative of our history, there's everything that we know about Khadi. And I think it's time to salute the contribution of Khaki.
Yes.
So, which is why we needed to tell this story.
So, which is why you chose this particular story?
Yes.
Also, did you choose this because of the gap, or because you are somewhere, you kind of resonated with what the INA stood for? Is that it? What was it about that particular era, which is why you got into that little dialogue?
For me, Netaji is a personal hero. We all grew up on that lore, on the history, and on all the mysteries surrounding his life and his,
Not being there.
Not being there, my uncle of mine, he was like one of those Netaji fields. He really researched stuff and found out, and I think it was when the idea came that we're going to write about this. It was like I've always wanted to write about this. Always, it was sitting in the back of your head somewhere in your life, and now. So I really believe that we don't choose the stories. The stories choose us.
Yeah.
We are there at a particular point of time when the story needs to be told, and it comes into our lives, and then there's somebody who actually becomes, I think, the vehicle. The characters choose us. We think we create the characters, but the characters kind of creep up onto us, and that's how you actually get down to.
I think for me, great time in India's history, untold story and all that aside, it makes for a crackling good yarn. And that's what I'm always excited by. I like historical fiction, but that which reads like a thriller. So it had all the makings of a story like that, which is why I jumped right into it.
This is your third book, Sanjay.
Yeah.
And your first two have also, your short stories have also won awards. I don't know whether you know this, but he's won really lovely awards in the UK and the US. So, being a pilot, I understand that it's autopilot sometimes. So how did you get time out from flying and then trying to catch up on your sleep and write all these amazing stories?
Your check's in the mail. Stop this.
I'm not even getting a check. I can ask you whatever I want.
No, but I think,
No, but I'm serious.
Yeah.
Because, it's such a different place. It needs so much of time. It needs so much of, space in your head. So how did you get into writing?
I think I need to write a book about this. Because I now believe, after 25 years of flying, that jet lag does this for you. I think jet lag opens up neural pathways which you never knew existed. And I really have jet lag to thank for it. So, it's the only positive effect of jet lag. So, it's physically tough to write in that space. But I think all my best plot ideas, story ideas have come at a time that I've just come back from a flight and I'm still recovering.
So you're in that in-between midnight zone. Nice. So what we're going to do is we're going to introduce the book to you in the form of 3 tiny little video snippets. So to give you just a feel of what the entire book is about. So please take a look. Can we dim the lights, please?
Kohima, 1944. The Indian National Army under Netaji is on the brink of throwing the British out of India and crippling their mighty empire. And then something goes wrong, horribly wrong. The Great March to Delhi is halted. The dreams of freedom lie shattered. What turned the tables? Was it British manipulation? Or dark forces closer to home? Or was it that ancient culprit, love? Find out in The Wrong Turn, a novel by Namita Ghose and Sanjay Chopra, a haunting tale of friendship and betrayal, of loss and redemption, now on Amazon and in bookstores.
दो.
A man, an honorable man, but with a heart divided, torn apart by twin loyalties, to his country on the one hand, and his love for a woman on the other. Caught up in an intricate jigsaw puzzle of treachery and friendship, revenge and regret, and haunted by a secret that would shatter a nation's dreams of freedom and change the destiny of a land. A sweeping saga of love and betrayal, loss and redemption in the time of Netaji, The Wrong Turn, a novel by Namita Ghose and Sanjay Chopra, from Om Books International, now on Amazon and in bookstores. Two friends, brothers in arms and rivals in love, caught up in an intricate jigsaw puzzle of treachery and friendship, revenge and regret that would shatter a nation's dreams of freedom and change the destiny of a land, all for the love of one woman. A haunting tale of friendship and betrayal, of loss and redemption, set in the time of Netaji. The Wrong Turn, a novel by Namita Ghose and Sanjay Chopra, from Om Books International, now on Amazon and in bookstores.
Fabulous. So now we're going to just have a small excerpt from the film, from the book. I'm so sorry, I'm surrounded by so many people from film. So we're going to have Simone Singh, who is going to read for us first.
Thank you, Ajay. I'm still Simone Singh, in case you forget next time around. Great for reading. Great for looking at me. All right, here we go.
Can you see through it?
That didn't work out very well, but thank you. Yes, would you please?
So, that Simone's reading from is when the INA are on the journey, moving towards Kohima, with for their tryst with destiny, and they're passing through these little Naga villages, and it's all the different experiences which they go through during that time. She's going to share one of those.
Captain, get me a troop from that Gurkha unit. The one which came over to our side last week? Yes, sir. Sir, for sentry duty? No, I want them for a really special op. Debraj had a wicked grin on his face and his eyes sparkled with mischief. Bands of dacoits had been terrorizing the countryside around Mamid. The retreating British had freed the inmates of the local prison, and these criminals had now taken to rape, pillage, and highway robbery. They were difficult to track as they just melted back into the jungle after their sorties. Debraj had got an idea on how to stop them. He chose 20 of the Gurkhas, all short and slightly built. When he told them what he wanted them to do, they collapsed in laughter. Gurung, their sergeant, turned red. He was very fair and blushed easily. "You're perfect, Gurung. You'll make a very pretty lantal." The men guffawed even louder. Lantal was Burmese street lingo for a sexy girl. Debraj's idea was to dress them up as women and use them as bait. The unit barbers gave them close shaves and reddened their lips, darkened their eyes, and they got into their glangs and salaus, native skirts and jackets. Well, something's missing. So they got hold of a crate of oranges and chucked 2 to each man. Then they were driven off, accompanied by whistles and lewd comments from the rest of the unit. At the local market, they drew a lot of attention, giggling and bargaining loudly. Then, armed with kukris under their salaus and revolvers in their baskets, they boarded a local bus bound for one of the outlying villages. 3 hours after being jostled on the potholed road, the girls hanging on desperately to the shifting fruit under their dresses, the bus was stopped by a group of rough-looking, unshaven men, armed with traditional long knives and shotguns. Licking their lips, they lined up the girls on the side of the road. The leader, grinning through stained teeth, spat out a long stream of tobacco juice as he made a beeline for Gurung, easily the prettiest. As he roughly felt up the sergeant's body, leering, his fetid breath smelling of cheap country liquor, making Gurung almost gag, his hand fell on a most unladylike appendage. Frowning in puzzlement, he gave it an exploratory squeeze. That did it. The kukri hidden inside Gurung's jacket came out in a bright silver arc, and the man's throat was slit from ear to ear. With a blood-curdling cry of Ayo Gurkhali, Gurung went into what the Gurkhas call divine frenzy. With his pretty features distorted into a snarl of revulsion, he leapt and slashed the next man across the throat, and then pirouetted to plunge his kukri into the next dacoit's eye. Most armies of the world lacked the nerve to face a full-on Gurkha charge. This was just a gang of common criminals. With Gurung menacingly polishing his kukri, the dacoits spilled all their secrets about their hideouts and their spies in the villages. Legends grew about the fair-skinned, beautiful female spirit who lopped the heads off evildoers. Children were cowed into eating up their food on threats of having her invoked. And no bus running along that road was ever stopped again.
Well, Rajat Kapoor, or like the Italians say, Rajat Kapoor.
So Rajat is going to read from the beginning part of the book, where we're setting it up. The whole story started in 2013. The National War Museum in London declared the twin battles of Kohima and Imphal, as the greatest battle that the British had ever fought. They rated it above Dunkirk and Waterloo. And so when this news came out, in Calcutta, 23rd January, Netaji's birthday, in a small little tea shop, some men have gathered, and this is what transpires.
Dulalda greets his latest client with obvious fondness. Good morning, Sudipta Babu. So how are things with our favorite young journalist? Sudipta rubs his hands, freezing Dulalda. Haru, my boy, one chai. Nice and hot, chop chop. He gestures towards Balaida's open paper. So what's the latest on that chit fund scam? Balaida shakes his head in disgust. That Madan fellow, caught red-handed. Shameful. Bambuldas scratches his stubbly grey beard. Mark my words, what India needs is a military dictatorship, like Pakistan. A strong hand at the head. No, Dada. Strong hand won't work anymore. What we need is a strong foot to give one tight, big kick up everyone's ass. There is muted laughter, a shake of heads, a scratching of bellies around the table. The sound of drumbeats and shouted slogans from the main road breaks the moment of reflection. Ganesh Babu looks up with exasperation. Now what? Abar ki? Dulalda gets up and pokes his head round the corner to look down the street. Of course, today is 23rd January, Netaji's birthday. Ganesh Babu throws his hands up in exasperation. Oh, re Baba, those bloody clowns will be out on the streets, left, right, marching around in those khaki shorts, causing traffic jams. The old man slumped in the corner, a shadow shape slowly stirs. Oops, I better hurry up then, mutters Bambulda, starting to gather his things. I have to go all the way to the Dalhousie area. The bank is really giving me a royal runaround over my pension checks. Sudipta too starts to take out change to pay Haru. But Ganesh Babu, if Netaji had been there today, this would have been a different country. He had such visions, such plans. Ganesh Babu looks at him curiously. Really? And how would a youngster like you know about Netaji? That's all ancient history. I'm a journal. I make it my business to know. And anyway, he's still relevant today. It's not just me. Every Bengali, every Indian should know what Netaji could have done. Balaida, who has been engrossed in his paper, suddenly slaps one page. What a coincidence. Hey, we were just discussing Netaji and see, there's a big article on him. Something about Imphal and Kohima. The old man sits up. The Irani glass rattles against his plate. Ganesh Babu is skeptical. Written by some party bigwig's chamcha. The Communist Party used to hate him when he was alive. But now they blow conch shells and clean up the crow shit on his statue once a year and make a big hoo-ha. Balaida shakes his head. No, actually it's written by a Thomas Jones, a Britisher, I think. It's about some battle. Here, you read it. He hands the paper to Sudipta. Secret files made finally public by Thomas Jones about a battle between the British and the Japanese and Azad Hind Fauj, Netaji's army. Happened in 1944. For 2 weeks, the future of the British Empire hung in the balance, etc., etc. Wow, look at this. Recently, UK's National Army Museum conducted a poll on Britain's greatest battle fought over the last 400 years. Waterloo, Aliwal, D-Day, Normandy, Rocks Drift and Imphal, Kohima were selected, but to everyone's surprise, the twin battles against Japan, Azad Hind Fauj fought in Kohima and Imphal in India were voted the greatest ever. Sudipta looks up, his eyes shining. Then he goes back to reading. Most Indians are not aware that one of the bloodiest and most crucial battles of World War II was fought on their soil, which, if Japan had succeeded in winning, would have changed the fate of the Allied forces and maybe the course of Indian history. Ganesh Babu is still skeptical. Just a gimmick to sell newspapers. Sudipta is indignant. How can you be so offhand about this, Ganesh Babu? Look here, it says. Suddenly his hand is jolted. The old man, who has crept up silently, snatches the paper out of his hands. Hey, what the? But he falls silent. A demented spark lurks just under the surface of the old man's milky eyes. He clutches the crumpled paper to his chest. His other hand, shaking, palsied, is raised to fend them off. part in imperious command, part in trembling entreaty. Slowly he backs away, shaking his head, then turns toward the murky light coming in from the street and holds up the paper. He reads silently, his lips moving imperceptibly, whisper of sound and breath. Balaida makes a silent but universally rude gesture, tapping his index finger against his temple. Bonkers, lost his marbles, it says. Haru stifles a giggle. The fog has thickened again, and inside the tea shop, there is a hush. Then the old man sighs, looks up. The dreamy eyes peer at them over the thick wire-framed spectacles. The ghost of a smile appears on his seamed face. When he speaks, his voice is hoarse, strained, almost as if he hasn't used it for a really long time. Finally.
Check. Thank you so much, Rajat. And now, finally, we have the girl who makes her path wherever she goes, Vidya Balan.
Firstly, good evening everyone, and congratulations to Namita and Sanjay. I was asked outside, why did you agree to read the book today, or why did you agree to be here today? And I've done many ads with Namita and Shubir at White Light, and I was petrified of them as a model. So the moment I got a call from Namita, it firstly took me a day to return the call. Now you know why. Not again. I thought, I didn't know what she was going to say, and then she said, I've written a book, and will you launch it? Before she could complete her sentence, I said yes. But this book is of course called The Wrong Turn.
You're in very good company. 50% of the people here can't say it.
No, but I must tell you that, the book is called The Wrong Turn, but ironically, my life as an actor took the right turn working with Namita and Shubir. I remember, I thought acting was about a pretty face, and okay, I did think I had a pretty face back then. But I thought that's what it was about, and I was doing a lot of ads, and then we went to Rajkot for an ad film. It was about a bike. I don't want to name it for obvious reasons, but we were doing the ad, and both the male model and me just couldn't get the moment right. It was about this man, who's just come back from the army and who gets a call. There's a message on the radio calling all army personnel back to the front. And we just couldn't get it right. And I remember getting fired by Namita and Shubir. And I remember then, somehow I got the shots right, and then there was a shot, there was a hand shot, and normally they have hand models to do it. So, I hadn't really manicured my fingers or anything. I hold the transistor and she fires me. She says, your nails are chipped. And you're firstly a woman in the village, you're not going to have such long nails, and then, to make matters worse, one nail is shorter than the rest of them. And I was mortified, I went back into the room, I had tears in my eyes, and I said, what the hell, why is she... But when I came out, she actually had this chat with me, which just made me look at everything very differently. It was actually that ad film, and I've never had a chance to thank you personally for that, but thank you so much. Because, during that shoot, she said it's so important for an actor to just soak in experiences of all kinds, whether you like it or not. Keep observing people, read the newspapers, read books, watch plays, movies, listen to music you like and don't like. Just keep yourself open to experiences. That's when you'll be able to feel a moment that you haven't experienced personally. And I think that changed a lot for me, and which is why I'm here today to say thank you more than anything else, and all the best to both of you. Sanjay, you're a bonus. I know your better half. Very well. And I was thrilled to know that you've co-authored the book, and all the best to both of you. That's a long speech. Should I even read now?
Yes, you're supposed to say yes.
So, Debraj is one of the characters, and Aditi is the woman, the one woman in the book. And Debraj is injured. He's in hospital, and Aditi's been looking after him. And this is a section from there.
Debraj felt restless. He had slept the whole afternoon and now, in the evening, felt cooped up. Aditi had been completely avoiding him the last few days. The Malay nurse, he kept forgetting her name, had taken over. Her rather rough, matter-of-fact ministrations, very different from Aditi's careful hands. He was irritated by Aditi's absence, her recalcitrance, her refusal to meet him halfway. To hell with her prissy Miss Two Shoes. He rang his bell, but no one came. Where was everybody? He struggled to ease himself out of his bed and managed to collapse onto his wheelchair. Outside, the cold antiseptic smell of the floor cleaners made him sneeze. He could see the nurse's station at the far end, light spilling out of an open door. But he didn't fancy talking to any of them. He felt a cool current of air coming from somewhere. He swerved and headed for its promise of freedom. A veranda led out onto a small walled garden. Crickets chirped. The oversweet fragrance of some nocturnal flower, the damp smell of earth, filled his lungs. It was turning dark, twilight softening the outlines of the little stone cherub perched under a drooping willow. He suddenly thirsted for a stiff drink and a cigarette. He thought of Nishanko, how he would never light a second cigarette from his match, calling it sniper bait. One strike, the enemy can't draw a bead. But you pass the flame to another cigarette, he's got you in his cross sights, and poof, your head bursts like a watermelon as you bend down to cup the light. All of a sudden, he missed Nishanko, missed his dry, reserved manner, his down-to-earth words. He missed Pandeyji, and even the ever-disapproving Captain Nawaz. He missed the male ribaldry and the clean single-mindedness of soldiers engaged in battle. He realized that none of them had tried to find out how he was, that the knowledge had been secretly rankling inside. Did no one care? Or maybe they didn't even know where he... Or maybe they didn't even know where he was. A shadow darkened the doorway. A figure in white, a nurse, stood there, shoulders hunched, indistinct in the twilight. "Hello?" Debraj called out softly. She straightened up, stepped into a spill of light. It was Aditi. He was absurdly happy to see her. She drew in a deep, shuddering breath. "What are you doing out here?" "Following doctor's orders, doing my evening constitutional." "Where's everybody?" He was glad to have her back. She shook her head as if trying to clear it. "One of the operations up north, it went wrong. We've all been busy." "Are you okay?" A long sigh of bone tiredness. She absent-mindedly started peeling off surgical gloves. He saw they were soaked in blood. He noticed that she still had a surgical mask curled around her throat. Without looking at him, she started to talk in a flat monotone. "They tell us it's useless, to waste time and supplies on the ones who are too damaged. It's so tough to get medicines, morphine. We're always running short. So who deserves them more? The ones who can continue to fight, or the ones who've already fought so hard and sacrificed so much? We make that call every night. We play God." He wheeled his chair, reached out his hand. She took it absent-mindedly, slowly sliding down the stone wall till she was resting on the stone flags, propped against his bandaged leg. He cupped his hand on the nape of her neck. She leaned back,
accepting the solace. They accept our professional judgment silently, no complaints. But their eyes, they grudge, their eyes. What happens if we're wrong? Maybe if he'd held on a little longer, given him some more penicillin, maybe... Who did you lose? Too many. Anwar Qasim. A big bull of a man. A laugh like a big drum. Told me to give the morphine to the bachas, the kids. Went so gently into the night with his God's name on his shattered lips. She started to cry softly, hot, fat drops. He leaned forward and enfolded her, burying his face in the springly, curly, cloudy mass of her hair. She smelled of hay, spring water, oranges, and lye. They remained like that for a long moment. Then she stirred, turned her face up to his. He stared at her at the wide apart eyes, the dark bruises of weariness like smudged coal underneath. She stared back. His hair had grown back curly. He had not been shaving, and his cheeks, hollow, thin, were shadowed with the beginnings of a beard. The irises of those grey, gold-flecked eyes were wide open, dilated like a cat's. The scar across his forehead, still healing, was a livid pink. She reached up to touch it with her fingertips. He held them, brought them to his lips. Then they kissed, chaste at first, the merest brush of lip against lip. Then exploring, feeling their way. Then the shock of hunger, and finally the plunge into the wet, secret recesses of each other. It was her first kiss.
You can't come late and say such things. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we are going to launch the book. So we would like the book to launch. Captain Sanjay Chopra. Mr. Umang Tiwari, Ajay Mago, Mr. Dharkar, Tisca Chopra, Rajat Kapoor, Vidya Balan. Is there anyone else that I have missed? Please, they won't give me my glass of wine if I miss anyone out. So I'm Simone Singh. So here it is. I don't play the drums, but da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da-da. Come on, guys, we have results. There it is, The Wrong Turn by Sanjay Chopra and Namita Roy Ghose.
What about Maria? She's not there. Maria's not there. I'm here.
No, but you can be here as well. She writes her own book, no, that's why. This book is no comfortable. I'll give you another please. Very tall. We are all fine in front of you. Still better, right? Still better.
You better have really wide angle lenses. Really wide. Not because any of us are wide. Thank you.
Nice guy.
पास है, मेरे पास है.
We just need to take a few photographs, so please bear with us. Worldwide, everyone's picking little gaps in history and making mega series, mega books, mega films out of it. I'd like to know from our amazing panelists. Tishu, you've done a film which is in editing right now on the Red Fort trials. So what part is fact, what part is fiction? Is history someone's opinion? Is it a victor's manuscript? Is it in fact actual documented history, or just one side of it? What do you think?
You're right, most of it is the victor's manuscript. And usually history is written in different ways. Sometimes history is written backed by a certain kind of ideology and philosophy. So I kind of, if I like an ideology, if I believe in an ideology, I'll read that author's history. See, the history which is being rewritten right now, I don't agree with it. So
Can you elaborate on that?
let's not elaborate on that. As far as the INA is concerned, and I'm making this film called Rag Desh, the Song of the Nation. It's about Netaji's International Army and how eventually the army, the INA lost, but they won us our freedom. And it's very ironical, and the whole mystery behind Netaji and what happened to Netaji, which is there so much in the news these days. But I'm not really interested in what really happened to Netaji. I'm more interested in what he did for the country. So history is interesting. I've been a history student. I'm from Allahabad University. So I've read some very serious history. So history is interesting because it tells us about our past, and if we don't learn from history, we're doomed to
repeat it. Yeah.
Repeat it. So I kind of really respect history, and I really all the time. This subject really interests me. I don't really read fiction too much. I only read politics and history and changes in society. So history in all forms is interesting, but if it is backed by an ideology which you believe in, it makes it more interesting.
Mr. Dharkar, you were with NFDC when Gandhi was commissioned. So what do you think about the film version of history? Is it okay to fictionalize? Recently we had an incident where a filmmaker was severely traumatized on his sets because he was sort of taking one side or portraying something. So what is your take on that? Should authors, filmmakers be allowed to give their version of history, or should they stick to facts? Are there in fact any facts?
Well, particularly about Gandhi, I think Richard Attenborough approached his subject with great reverence, and that shows through the film. For him, Mahatma Gandhi was really the Mahatma, and I think that's the reason the film worked, because he made Gandhi such a great man, and the incidents were played up so very well with the right kind of sentiment and emotion. Now, if you set out to do the other kind of Gandhi film, which Richard Attenborough obviously wouldn't have done, but someone else could do, where you show a lot of the things that Gandhi did which were not Mahatma-like, and we know all about those because a lot has been written about it. Unfortunately, we now live in an India where that would not be permitted. Though Mahatma Gandhi is worshipped only by default now. No one actually follows anything Gandhi has taught. But you try and make a film about Gandhi's his very strange ideas about relationships, about diet, about
raising his own son.
About morality, etc. You make a film about that, and immediately all the hackles will rise. Mr. Nihalini will ban it. So now, this is where I think we need to change the thought process in our country. We need diversity of opinion. We need to see any man, however great he is, has a negative side. And we should be able to see that, and we should be able to talk about it. We should be able to depict it in a movie. Right? As it is, history is never truly, is never the truth, in the sense that it is the truth as seen by a particular historian. And as you were saying, there is an approach, which is a philosophical, political approach. You could have a leftist history, you could have a right-wing history, and so on. Therefore, you need several histories about the same subject to actually get at a true picture.
And an evolved society would allow for that sort of diverse narrative to emerge.
An evolved society would. I mean, we always joke about Trump. But look at the way Trump is vilified now, and the way people joke about him at the Oscars, the fun they made about him. Can you imagine similar fun being made about any of our leaders? It just wouldn't be. Just wouldn't happen.
India.
Try and make jokes about Narendra Modi.
I always say that India is the funniest country with no sense of humor. Very profound. Take your time to get it.
Arshad.
Yeah. Don't ask me anything sensible. Please do, please do. She's very serious.
Catch
You're
me
gonna
after,
drink somebody.
Yeah, after a drink I was gonna say. So, films, books, art is supposed to hold up a mirror to society and provide a Rashomon-like perspective to an incident or whatever's happening in society at that point. If one side of that is shut down and only one side of the narrative is allowed to progress, then that becomes somebody's version of history, something that we've been reading for many, many years. So, your version as an artist.
Can you repeat that, please? Like it's I have to say, a book is one person's point of view. I mean, everybody's point of view, and a film is a director's point of view. So I think somewhere that is what it's all about. So unfortunately, in the country we are and the way things are, movies, books, and any kind of idea has become a third person's point of view. Somebody else decides what you should write or you should do or you should think. It's a very confused situation. One has to work around creativity. So it's very hard to answer a question like that. It's very difficult. See, I'll tell you honestly, we are in a position, we are in time where you have to weigh every word you say. It's a horrible time. It's not good. It's not good.
Recently, the Oscars happened, and there was such a huge sort of uprising within the artistic community, whether they were cinematographers, actors, writers. Everyone was up in arms against what's happening with the policies of Trump. And Asghar Farhadi, who won the best foreign film, actually didn't come to the Oscars too. So as artists, as writers, as artists, should we not actually take some sort of a stand? But I think we're all really worried about our reputations and our bread and butter and all of that, and we don't actually take a stand in India about something like that. What do you think is the reason for that? Why are we not taking a stand?
We are too frightened and too small a community to take a stand for anything. We are not built to fight. We are not built to create riots. We are docile, soft, artistic people. We are not the kind of people who will throw stones at people. We are not the kind of people who are going to enter a place and create a riot. Therefore, we have to be quiet, unfortunately. This is, I wish the government, the law would help us out. If tomorrow we have the whole artistic film writers community gets together, hires a whole lot of goons with sticks and stones, and we start protecting ourselves, there'll be no difference between anybody else and us. That's the sad part. I wish we had the government who would back us up, because we are not fighters.
Why would the government back you to talk against the government? That is a very unrealistic expectation. You have to, as artists, whether you're an actor or a writer or a director or whatever, you have to raise your voice. And I think when the conditions in the country are hostile, you need to raise your voice louder. And you can't wait for a special dispensation to do that. It just has to come from you, has to come from each one of us.
Many a times the industry has raised voice, but nothing happens. Absolutely nothing happens.
Just sorry to cut you short. During the emergency, 1975, Devanand Saab floated a party against the Congress openly. और बहुत सारे members थे उनके, but nothing happened to the party because Congress also lost. But उस वक्त he had the guts.
You know, Arshad, sorry. So I think as artists or writers or filmmakers, so we're not trying to start riots. We're not trying to. So what can we do? We tell stories. And just yesterday we were talking that actually human civilization started with telling stories. When we started to tell stories, we moved from being one kind of species to another. Stories are the biggest currency that human beings have. And that's what we deal in. So when we start telling stories, maybe, cleverly, surreptitiously, but when we start introducing ideas, when we start introducing other points of view, that's the kind of thing that I think artists can do. We can't go out there and start riots.
Stories are told to children by their parents right from birth. I don't know how much it has helped. We are not getting any better. You know what I mean? I mean, if telling stories, if that would help, I don't know what would help. We've gone to another level of discussion. But the fact is, I'm not very happy with the way things are. So it hurts me.
No, but you're also wrong in expecting immediate results. Immediate results never come. It is attrition. You have to chip away. You have to keep chipping away before. And I think the central message which has to go out, particularly now, is that patriotism is not just a case of waving your flag and becoming ultra-nationalist. Patriotism, the real patriotism, also involves correcting the faults of your society, which is being critical about society and all the wrongs in society. And our society is not perfect by any means. There are a huge number of things which are wrong with it. So if you talk about it, it is not being unpatriotic, it is being very patriotic.
So coming back to the book, this book raises the much needed dialogue and discussion about, I'd like the authors to jump in at this point and talk about the narrative that this book has, because I'm married to one of the authors, so I have a little insider view into the book. So one of the narratives that is part of the book is the contribution that Bose and his men in khaki had to the freedom struggle. Sanjay, Namita?
So there's large parts of our history, like they were talking about history backed by an ideology or a philosophy. But I think that there's a real danger in letting history serve an ideology. Because the moment you treat history as a slave or a servant, and you send it out in the world to do your bidding, then you're only propagating a certain kind of ideology, and more often than not imposing it on everybody else. I think we are in the real danger of that happening all the time. And again, I think it's the human condition. Humans acting in groups always try to impose their will and their opinion on others. This entire book actually started when we read an article in the London Telegraph, which was very, very strange, because in 2013, the National War Museum in London had this survey, and they had military historians do this survey, and they came out with an amazing fact, that the Battle of Kohima was the greatest battle that Britain had ever fought, which Namita had spoken about earlier. Now this is very surprising, because Britain in the European theatre has fought all their major wars, their major battles. One small cantonment town in the northeast, how could it even be possible that Britain or the English considered it to be the biggest battle? So that the entire process for this book, about this book and this story, started from there. And then we started doing research, and we understood that on that fateful day, which was 4/4/44, as in 4th April 44, Britain could actually have lost India. And this is borne out by their communications between Churchill and Mountbatten, who was the commander-in-chief here. And Churchill said that on my watch, no matter what happens, I would not want to lose India. I don't want to supervise the breakup of the empire. And what had happened is that in 2 days, in those 2 fateful days, I think the entire history of India actually took a wrong turn. Because if they had won, and they had won at Kohima, the road to Calcutta was open, there was nobody to oppose them, and India would have gone a completely different way. So this backdrop is what really excited us, and so we started asking the attorney, what if it wasn't a straightforward battle, but what if there was a betrayal? What if it was brought about by forces, desperate forces that came together at Kohima and to vie for the brightest jewel in the crown, which was India itself. And as we know, the history of battles and revolutions in India, betrayal is one strong undercurrent that runs through everything. I mean, in India it's famous that not every gun is trained at the enemy. There's been times when we've trained our guns upon each other and ourselves and brought down great things from happening. So that's how the process for this book started.
May I?
Sorry, yes, please.
I think we were talking about how history has there can be different viewpoints of history, and here where I would like to differ, because though of course this was a huge battle, and Britain really got a massive scare and they almost lost it. But I think suppose the INA had managed to get into Calcutta, I don't think the British would have been overthrown, because the INA didn't have the strength to carry on and conquer the whole country. What I think Subhash Chandra Bose was expecting, was hoping, was that India would arise, right, because the army had come in, because the INA had come into Calcutta and Dhaka. But the British had put all our leadership into jail. Everyone was in jail at that time. So without that leadership, I don't know whether there would have been an uprising.
But Mr. Darkar, you know what happened? After the INA lost, and Tigmanshu will know this whole history, of course. After the INA lost, the British were very triumphant, and they said, we're going to teach them a lesson. So they say that, they chose 3 men, and Subhash Chandra Bose himself couldn't have chosen better, because he chose a Muslim, a Sikh, and a Hindu, and he put them up for trial. And the British put them up for trial. And the whole point was that treason against emperor. But the point they made was, we are an independent government, we are a provisional government, and we do not owe allegiance to the crown. So when they actually fought the case, and those men were actually, sentenced to death, what happened was the country actually rose up. Even the leaders, if they weren't around, the Bombay Mutiny happened, and the kind of domino effect that started to happen. And finally they understood that there is actually no way that we can actually stay on in India. So though they didn't win, the point is that the kind of turning point was the fact that they fought. They didn't just lie down, and they didn't just keep on accepting, and they said, okay, it's something, even at, and what Subhash Chandra Bose keeps on saying, that that idea that we have to sacrifice. Are you willing to do that? So they were willing to do that, and that is what caught, I think, the imagination of the entire country, and everybody from that point onwards, they knew that they could stay on in India. And Sanjay, if you would like to share what you were talking about, that book that you...
Yeah, so it was, in fact, it reads like fiction. I mean, a really good author couldn't have thought of a better plot than this, because in fact, Bose couldn't have asked for anything better to happen with what he was trying. And Tisha and I were discussing how ironical the entire experience must have been for the British, because what they were trying to prevent in actually smothering information about Bose and everything else, but when they put these three people on trial, they actually publicized what they were trying to actually keep under wraps. And when that happened, for the life of them, they couldn't have understood, because Bose's main aim was, he knew the INA was too strong, but it was a symbolic force. And he thought that the Indian army, that is the British Indian army, would actually rise in rebellion. They would see their brothers wearing another uniform, and they'd realize that they were mercenaries actually, and they would go over the other side, because that was the true Indian army, in his words. I mean, opinions can of course differ, but that never happened. However, because of the Red Fort trials, it all came to light, and India suddenly started becoming patriotic in a different kind of way. When their field marshal was asked in 1942 that, can you hold India? His reply was, I have no reason to suspect the loyalty of the Indian sepoy as they used to call them. But in 1945, when he was asked the same question, he did not reply for a long time. And when he replied, he says, I have no answer to give. I cannot guarantee the loyalty of the Indian sepoy today, because he has seen what it is to be Indian. So their foundations were shaking. And when the first mutiny, the naval mutiny, happened in Bombay, they realized that they could not hold on anymore. There is a very interesting book which is out now called Holding On to the Jewel. And it's by a British historian who's, again, there's been records that have now come out in the open, and documents and files, secret files that have been. And it's amazing that the British actually never intended to leave India. And strangely enough, they had earmarked a plot, 150 acres in size, outside Delhi, to keep as their embassy. 150-acre plot, which would help India militarily and economically. They wanted to hold on even then, because they thought that they could give some form of autonomy, people would be happy, and they would never have to leave. So what compelled them to leave ultimately was the fact that they did not have the manpower, the sepoy, the eternal sepoy who guarded every cantonment. They did not have him on their side, and they could not hold on to his loyalty. They decided that before they are slaughtered to a man, which was a nightmare from the 57 mutiny, they better leave. And their communications that happened at that time bear this out to a large extent.
Just tell you an incident. When the trial started happening, the first day of the trial, when Gurubakshin, as Namita said, there were 3 officers put on trial, a Sikh, a Hindu and a Muslim. So Gurubakshin Dhillon was a Sikh, Prem Sehgal, जो शाद अली के नाना है, प्रेम सहगल and Shahnawaz Khan, a Muslim. So they were taking the trials happened at the Red Fort, the Salimgarh Fort. Within the Red Fort, there's a POW camp was made, and they were taking inside the truck. So Gorkha soldiers were escorting them along with some British officers. The British officer pushed Dhillon. Chaldi chalo karke. He pushed. Dhillon turned and slapped him. There's a brief scuffle happened between them, but no Gurkha soldier came up to save the British officer. And then Jawaharlal Nehru, because Jawaharlal Nehru was part of the defense committee who was fighting the case for the INA, he came up and said, this is the first sign of independence. Today we saw, because a British officer was, slapped, and none of the Gurkha soldiers kind of came to help, and the trial happened. That was the beginning of the trial. So actually INA sahi hua jo kuch hua.
But it's about time that people knew this history.
Yeah, absolutely. No, but these are the incredible ifs and buts of history. Now we don't know what would have happened in Britain if the Tories were in power and Churchill was Prime Minister and not Attlee had been the Prime Minister. Again, We can only guess.
We can only guess, and that is why writing fiction is the best thing possible.
And on that note,
and it's not just, it's also safe. Very safe.
And
We have a large disclaimer.
on that note, is there anyone who has one or two quick questions to ask the authors, the panelists, or would everyone like to now head towards the bar? Poonam, Maria.
The bar. Maria will ask me, have the kids gone to sleep?
No, what I want to ask both of you is, yes, this took 2 years to write, and it was about something that was really close to your heart, a story that you said needed to be told at this point of time. As to individuals, was there ever a point when you were writing that you thought that the story had to go a different way, or were you always, on agreement with everything?
Well, actually,
And who won the rounds most of the time?
no. So what we did when we first started writing was we actually wrote out a screenplay. Before the book, there was a screenplay. Because when the idea came up, we had thought that it would make a great film. So it started with a screenplay. So already there was a structure in place. And as we went along, one of the things I think on which we stumbled was we had researched, but we had thought most of the stuff had happened in Burma. And so we had set a large part of the story, the entire middle, in Burma. And we researched Burma, and we the nightclubs, everything. And then we discovered that no, they were actually in Singapore. So everything has, so that took us back a little bit. Arguments, no. I mean, I think if you're not perhaps even seeing the same thing, it's, I think, true of any collaboration that you discuss it, and the person who's making more sense in the context of what you're trying to do at that point of time, and for the story. I think the whole point about collaboration is you give up your egos for the final baby, So what was good for the story, what would work for the story, what needed to be told, how it needed to be structured, what characters to drop, what characters to introduce, the rhythm of the story, where to hold back. So we discussed a lot, and if there were areas of disagreement, we talked it out and then sorted it out.
I want to ask a question, which is that the mechanics of writing, I can understand both of you developing a plot together, but who actually writes? How can two people share writing? I don't understand, because there's a uniformity of style.
No, it's
not as if there are two different styles at once.
No, so we had to, there were many drafts made. Sanjay worked on certain sections of it, I worked on certain sections of it, and we worked out the drafts, and then, like I said, we had the screenplay in place. But at the end of it, one person has to write, because there is stylistic, language, all that. So one person did it.
I think also what happened is that since we've known each other for so long and we'd worked on this for so long, that those styles actually merged. And what happened was that there were parts where I thought that I have done a lot of research and I've been influenced by military history and battles all the time, so let me write this scene, this battle scene. And then she would come in and say, no, but it's not making sense like this, I think we should do this. And then we would incorporate that, or the other way around. So we would keep coming back and cross-referencing and going back to the same thing again and again, till, strangely enough, a style of its own emerged, which is, I think the best part of both our styles.
Who wrote that scene which was read about the kiss?
That was me. Yeah, so that was me. But the one about the Gurkhas was Sanjay, about the Kiss was kiss. Yes, kiss was mine. Yes, yes.
Poonam. Okay. Hi. Being a writer myself, I believe that a writer has to be first true to themselves. Okay, you write. I believe that you write first for yourself, and then if it goes out to a larger audience, that's brilliant. I also believe that we often tend to romanticize the past, and by the past I mean history. So my question to you is, how much of the fact did you keep as fact? How much of it did you actually fictionalize so that it went under the genre of historical fiction?
There was no actual effort made to achieve any of those ends there. But fiction writers are not really duty bound to report, in the sense that you could actually stick to facts all the time, but then your narrative would read like a lecture on history. And then what would happen is that you'd completely leach all vigor out of your story. You know, you'd make it sound so boring and tepid and probably not engaging or exciting. On the other hand, you can't also be fast and loose with your facts, simply because there are real people involved here, there are real incidents that took place. So you've got to strike a balance. That's the most exciting thing about historical fiction, that you find that balance and you find those holes and you slip and you spin a yarn through them.
Yeah, and
how much creative license do you take in something like this?
So I think the broad strokes of history, what happened, the fact that Netaji went to Tokyo, that he went to Singapore, what happened in Singapore, that they went to Burma, what he said at various points of time, all those broad strokes of history are all there. The people, so maybe there's a character who's a composite of three real characters, or there is a character who's been introduced who we wish was there, who could, you know, do something to push the plot along. I think definitely one of the liberties we took was with the Rani Jhansi Brigade, which were behind the scenes. They didn't come up to the main battle lines when they went into Kohima, but our love story had to have her there. So that's one liberty we took, and we said yes, some of them did go into the forward medical stations. So for I think the sake of what the story needed to say about this one betrayal which stood for so many betrayals, so many ways in which that time and that action was betrayed. So for that, those small little things were taken. Yeah. Anita, you wanted to raise your hand? Yeah.
So, Anita from Radio 1. Perhaps the last question, because I think everyone's sort of craving a drink now.
Thirsty, yes.
When you got down to your research for the book, one of the interesting things was where you sat down and you found historical papers, and Sanjay also pointed out the fact that they burned those papers, so therefore you were not able to fill those gaps. So how did you fill those gaps in history?
You want to take it?
So that's actually what made it most interesting. If they'd not burnt those papers, we wouldn't have been able to write any story. Then that would have been history. So the thing they did, of course, is that they burnt those papers and therefore invited legions of writers from here on forward to write whatever they like about that time and whatever interpretation they might have had. So, like I said, we didn't play loose with any facts that actually, of events or characters or people who actually lived in those times. But then we found enough to be able to make a story out of it, and an engaging story, something that reads like a thriller rather than just, something just about history.
Thank you so much.
Thank you everyone for being such a wonderful and rapt audience. Thank you, Anil, Kishu, Arshad. Congratulations, Namita, Sanjay. Pictures. Okay, I think the authors and the panelists are needed outside for photo ops.